Hey everybody, so today I want to talk about 5 players that I think should and will get traded at or before the trade deadline this season and will not finish the year with their current teams. Before we get into the video, I just quickly want to remind everyone to please hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. It greatly helps out the channel and helping the channel to grow. So 5 players that I think will be traded from their current teams. They're all pending unrestricted free agents, and it just makes sense for these teams to move on from these players. And we're going to start, here's the list right here. A couple from New Jersey, Taylor Hall and Wayne Simmonds, Tyler Toffoli in LA, Chris Kreider with the New York Rangers, and Mike Green with the Detroit Red Wings. I'll go into more detail with each one, starting with the biggest fish in the sea, Taylor Hall. Hall, an upcoming pending unrestricted free agent. New Jersey obviously not having the year that they wanted to this season. New Jersey before in the offseason kind of went all in on this team being good, and they are not good. They are one of the worst teams in the league. Things are not going well. And it only makes sense for them to move on and get something for Taylor Hall rather than just letting him walk in free agency. Taylor Hall is not coming back to the New Jersey Devils. I just don't see, nothing is pointing towards him coming back. Everything is saying he's either going to get traded, which apparently the Devils are already well into trade discussions with other teams about Hall, or he's going to leave in free agency. He doesn't want to be in New Jersey. So if you're looking at this from the Devils' perspective, why not get something for him and trade him rather than just letting him leave at the end of the season when you're doing absolutely nothing this season anyway? Taylor Hall will be traded this year. I just don't think it makes any sense for him not to be. And, he's a guy who you look at his stats. We know the player that he can be. He had a 93-point season a couple of years ago and won the league MVP. He missed a good chunk of last season, only played 33 games, but had 37 points in those 33 games last year with the Devils. This year, not as good. 27 games played, so he's been healthy all year, but only 4 goals in 22 points, and he's minus 11 already on the season. New Jersey stinks this year. Hall hasn't been very good. It's not working. So it's not working for New Jersey. It's not working for Taylor Hall. Trade him. Obviously, I think what you get in return for him is largely going to depend on if he can re-sign with the team that he's traded to or if he's just a rental for a few months. But there are a lot of teams that could use Taylor Hall added to their lineup and would really push them into being a legit Stanley Cup contender if they were to add an offensive star like Taylor Hall. So I think there's a lot of interest out there. It's just about finding the right deal, but Hall is going to get traded. I think very, very sooner rather than later is my bet for Taylor Hall. Sticking with the New Jersey Devils is another Devil who's having a pretty down year, and that is Wayne Simmonds. Wayne Simmonds went to New Jersey this past summer on a 1-year deal. He's an unrestricted free agent again at the end of this season, and he only has 4 goals and 11 points in 27 games for the Devils this year. I mean, we know that he's on a really bad team, so that doesn't help, but this is not the Wayne Simmonds of, 2013 or 2011 or anything, 2012 when he had 15 goals and 32 points in 45 games, or when he was pushing 30 goals a season. And then, even later with Philly, 15, 16, 32 goals, 16, 17, 31 goals. It's been a decline, a big decline in Wayne Simmonds' play since then. 2017-18, he only had 24 goals. Then last year, he dropped to 17. This year, he only has 4, and we're about a third of the way through the season. So he's on pace for about 12 goals this year. Listen, Wayne Simmonds is still a good player in a specific role. If you want Wayne Simmonds to come in and be a top-line goal scorer for you, he's not that anymore. That's not what he is at this point. If you want Wayne Simmonds to come in, be a third-line guy who can give you around 15 goals a season and maybe 30 to 40 points, And, he can play the front of the net on the power play. He's a great leader in the locker room. He obviously brings a lot of toughness and grit to any lineup that he joins. If you're looking for that from Wayne Simmonds, go out there and get him. Go trade him. Go trade for him and bring him in. Because I think if you're a team entering the postseason this year, Wayne Simmonds is going to be a great guy to have in, that third line type role. Now, if you go out and you expect him to come in and be a top 6 goal scorer like he used to be, that's just asking too much, and it's not going to happen. But if you know what you're getting in Wayne Simmonds, which is a solid veteran leader, a very tough player who can play physically and will certainly perform in the playoffs, and, someone who can give you third line point production, then I think it would make a lot of sense for teams to add Wayne Simmonds at this deadline. And, it obviously makes sense for New Jersey to get rid of him. He's only on a 1-year contract. He's probably not coming back. This whole experiment that New Jersey tried this year has fallen flat on its face and not worked out at all. So I don't see Wayne Simmonds returning to the Devils. Next up, we have Tyler Toffoli from the Los Angeles Kings. So Tyler Toffoli is a name who has been involved in trade rumors for over a year now. It's really started last year when the Kings were really bad. And the Kings are once again one of the worst teams in the league. They're really, really bad again this year. But Tyler Toffoli is on an expiring contract. He's going to hit free agency this offseason. I don't think he's going to re-sign with the Kings, who are now about to be in full rebuild mode. So I think it's highly it makes sense for the Kings to move on from him. He's a middle of the lineup guy, somebody who can play third or second line. He's 27 years old. Like, he's going to hit free agency. There's no way he re-signs with the Kings in the current state that they're in. He's been a 20-goal scorer before. He has had one 30-goal season back in 2015-16, but lately hasn't been nearly as good. Last year, he only had 13 goals, which is a very, very bad year for him. This year, he's got 6 goals and 7 assists for 13 points through 28 games. If you put Tyler Toffoli on the second line of a decent team, I think he's easily a 20 to 25 goal scorer. And if you're a team looking for some scoring depth heading into the postseason, Tyler Toffoli should be a name near the top of your list for a second or third line secondary scorer role. I think he can perform in that role very, very well. And if you get him on a good team, off of the Kings and on a decent playoff level team, I think his production naturally will go up. A very similar player in a lot of respects to Tyler Toffoli is Chris Kreider, another guy that I think should and will get traded. Now, the New York Rangers, unlike I've been talking about the Kings and Devils, who have zero shot of making the playoffs this year and are well out of things as far as the playoff picture goes, the New York Rangers are a team that is not that far out of things. I don't think the Rangers make the playoffs this year, however, and I do think that they should trade Chris Kreider, because when you look at Chris Kreider is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. He's making $4.625 million on this current contract. He's 28 years old. Look at the contracts. They have Ryan Strome, who's an RFA, so they have to re-sign him. They have Brendan Lemieux, who's an RFA again. They have to re-sign him. And Tony DeAngelo is an RFA at the end of this season. And after giving Panarin $11.6 million per year, New York is one of those teams that's very tight up against the salary cap. So they're not going to be able to re-sign Chris Kreider and re-sign some of these RFAs that they certainly need to keep. Strome is someone I definitely think that is fitting in very well and going to stay in New York. Tony DeAngelo is becoming a very solid middle of the lineup defenseman for the Rangers. Brendan Lemieux, I think, is a guy that they want to keep. I think they see, obviously he brings a lot of toughness and sandpaper to the game, but I think the offense is starting to come with Lemieux, and they see a Tom Wilson type career for Lemieux, where, he comes into the league as this physical fourth-line grinder, but then the offense starts to come and he becomes, maybe a 20-goal scorer while still bringing that sandpaper and physicality. I don't think that's necessarily somebody that you want to give up on. He's only 23. So I see New York wanting to keep all three of those major RFAs. They're not going to be able to do that and keep Chris Kreider. So assuming Kreider is going to be gone at the end of the year in free agency, why not trade him now? New York's not a team, I don't see them making the playoffs. You have Washington in that division, who's one of the best teams in the league. You have the Islanders, who are one of the best teams in the league and certainly a playoff team. You have the Philadelphia Flyers, who are having a very, very good season this year. So those are looking like your top three teams in that division. Then you have the Penguins and Hurricanes, who both are very solid this season and look like certainly playoff contenders. So you could, if you're the Rangers, you could have a good season and still finish sixth in that division and miss the playoffs. So I just don't see the Rangers finishing ahead of any of those teams I just mentioned. So there's really no point in keeping Kreider, especially since he's probably going to be gone in free agency anyway. So trade Chris Kreider. He's similar to Tyler Toffoli in the fact that he's a middle-of-the-lineup guy, second or third-line guy who can add some goal scoring. Kreider's been a 20-goal scorer. He had 28 goals last season. He's kind of having a down year this year, however, only 6 goals and 7 assists in 26 games. But again, if you get him in the right situation, I think he could really help a team on a playoff push. And this might be more of a deadline deal than a now deal. I think this is probably one that you see in February. But a team that's, looking to add a little bit of scoring depth heading into the postseason could really benefit from adding a guy like Chris Kreider. So I think he does get moved eventually this year and will be on a new team for a playoff push. And finally, the last player I want to talk about, the only defenseman on the list, is Mike Green of the Detroit Red Wings. And we know Detroit is the worst team in the league so far this year. They're going nowhere very fast. They're still in full rebuild mode. Mike Green is 34 years old. He's on an expiring contract this season. He's not going to be back in Detroit. This is a team that needs to get younger. This is a team that is looking to acquire draft picks and prospects and build for the future. Mike Green at 34 years old is not part of this team's future. I don't think we really ever see him re-sign here. So if you're the Red Wings, why not trade him and get a draft pick for him, maybe a B-level prospect, get something in return rather than him just leaving at the end of the season. He only has 5 points in 22 games this year, and he's minus 13 on the season. But he's on the worst team in the league, and Detroit is really, really bad. I think that if, Mike Green's the kind of guy now that if you could add him as a depth D-man, like a bottom pair guy on a playoff team, I think he could add some, offense from the back end for a team that might need to add that. And, one that comes to mind is the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Edmonton in their salary cap space is pretty tight, so that may hinder a move like this. But when you think about it, you look at Edmonton's D-core and where they're at. They're leading the Pacific Division. They look like a playoff team. Adding a guy like Mike Green could really, really help out a team like the Oilers who, could use that veteran presence on the back end. Green's still a good puck mover. He can still skate. It's not a long-term commitment as he's on an expiring contract. You're probably not going to have to give up a whole lot for him, maybe like a third-round pick or something like that. So, if you're a playoff team looking to add to your defense core and bring in like probably a bottom pair guy who can bring some offense to the table, Mike Green would be the first name at the top of my list, and it makes sense for Detroit to want to move on from him as he's aging on an expiring contract, and Detroit is in full rebuild mode looking to go younger. So those are 5 players that I think should and will get traded for various different reasons that we just talked about. Taylor Hall and Wayne Simmonds in New Jersey, Tyler Toffoli in Los Angeles, Chris Kreider in New York, and Mike Green in Detroit. It just makes sense. I think those are guys that could help a playoff team go on a run into the postseason, and they're on teams that really don't need them. They're on expiring contracts, and it would probably make more sense for their particular teams to trade them now, get something in return, rather than just letting them leave at the end of the year in free agency. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.